You know, it's kind of fun in the winter. Um, you can be going one way on a hill, and you're driving along, you're doing just fine, everything's okay, and then all of a sudden, you come around and you come back the same hill, but you're going the opposite direction on that hill, and you slide all the way down the hill. So you turn around and you come at it this way, and everything's fine, and you drive the hill, and there's no problems, but when you turn back around and come back at it the other way again, you slide all the way down the hill, there's no traction. Winter, snow, ice, kind of makes things kind of interesting sometimes driving. Anyway, we've got today Jim Butcher's Small Favor, which is book 10 of the Dresden Files. What we've got today looks like chapter 17. So you guys can go ahead and grab your copies of the book, like, subscribe, and share, and we will get started here on chapter 17. I picked up my staff and rose to face the enormous Gruff. Murphy watched me with very, very wide eyes. "This is neutral ground," I said quietly. "Aye," the Gruff agreed. "The accords alone keep thy neck unbroken, thy skull uncracked. Or your enormous ass uncooked," I replied, staring up and setting my jaw. "Don't start thinking it would be easy, Tiny." "Mayhap, and mayhap not," the Gruff replied. "'Tis a question answered only by the field." I breathed as shallowly as I could. The huge Gruff didn't smell bad, precisely. But he sure as hell smelled a lot. "Speak." "We find ourselves at odds, friend of winter," the Gruff rumbled. "Friend of summer, too," I said. "They gave me jewelry and everything." "Aye," the Gruff said. "You have done good service to my court, if not to my queen. I am surprised, then, to your use of the Bane pawn, two of my younger kin." "The Bane?" Murphy said quietly. "Iron," I clarified. I turned back to the Gruff. "They were trying to kill me. I wanted to survive." "No friend of either court would so employ the Bane, wizard," the Gruff growled. "Do you not know this? It is more than a mere weapon, and the pain it causes more than simple discomfort. It is a poison, body and spirit, that you have used upon us." I glared at the big idiot. "They were trying to kill me," I repeated, only more slowly, so it would be all insulting. "I wanted to survive." The Gruff narrowed its eyes. "Then you intended to continue as you have begun?" "I intend to survive," I replied. "I didn't ask for this fight. I didn't begin it." "Thou art fated to die in any case, mortal, soon or late. Why not face it with honor and make thy passing more peaceful thereby?" "Peaceful?" I asked, barely containing a laugh. "If I go down fighting, Tiny, I plan for it to be about as unpeaceful as things get." I jabbed a finger at him. "I've got nothing against you and your brothers, Tiny, except that you keep trying to frickin' kill me. Back off, and it won't have to get any uglier than it already has." The Gruff growled. It sounded like a dump truck grinding its gears. "That I will not do. I will serve my queen." "Then don't expect anything but more of the same from me," I replied. "You would behave this way in the service of winter?" the Gruff demanded incredulously. "You, who struck the heart of Arctis Tor, who hold has the Dark Queen upon you, mortal. Sorry, Tiny, but you aren't nearly as special as you think you are. This is pretty much the way I behave every time someone tries to whack me. I gestured at him with my staff. So if you came here to try to talk me into lying down and dying, you can leave the way you came in. And if you're the one coming after me next, you'd better have more brains than your brothers did, or I'm going to leave you as a great big pile of cold cuts and spare ribs. The gruff growled again and gave me a stiff nod. Then come out and let us settle this. Uh-oh. Showing bravado to the bad guys, or the not-so-bad guys as the case may be, is a given, a part of the territory, but I'd never taken on anything with the sheer mass of Tiny the Gruff. And I really didn't think I'd care to try my hand against him without one hell of a lot of preparation first. I also had to remember that big didn't necessarily equal stupid, not given the circles he apparently moved in. In fact, most of the higher reaches of the Summer Court knew a formidable amount of counter-magic. If Tiny here had half the ability I'd seen demonstrated in the past, I would be in real trouble in a straight fight. All he had to do was stand outside and wait. Mac's place had only the one door. Worse, Thomas and Molly were waiting outside in Thomas's barge, and they would be sure to join in. I wasn't sure what could happen at that point, leaving totally aside the fact that we'd be brawling in the middle of Chicago in broad daylight. I had to think that the Gruff might have backup waiting nearby to intervene if anyone outside the business of the courts of winter and summer tried to interfere. Molly was of limited capability in the fight, and Thomas tended to believe that the best way to approach any given combat was with a maximum of power and speed and aggressive ferocity. Things could get really messy really fast. I was trying to think of a way of getting out of this without getting anyone killed when Murphy put her gun on the table and said in a very clear, loud, challenging tone, "I don't think so." The Gruff turned to stare at her in surprise. So did Mac. So did everyone else there. Heck, so did I. Murphy stood straight up and turned to face the enormous Gruff with her feet spread. I will not let this challenge to my authority pass. The Gruff tilted its head to one side. Its horn dug furrows in the wooden ceiling. Mac winced. "Lady?" it rumbled. "Do you know who I am?" Murphy asked. "A lady knight, a shield-bearer of this mortal demesne," the Gruff replied. "An officer of the law, or so I believe it is called." "That's right," she said calmly. "I make no challenge to your authority, Dame." "Murphy," she said. "Dame Murphy," rumbled the Gruff. "But you do," Murphy said. "You have threatened one I am sworn to protect." The Gruff blinked, a considerable gesture on his scale, and glanced at me. "This wizard?" "Yes," Murphy said. "He is a citizen of Chicago, and I am sworn to protect and defend him against those who would harm him." "Dame Murphy," the Gruff said stiffly, "this matter is not one of mortal concern." "The hell it isn't," Murphy said. "This man lives in Chicago. He pays taxes to the city. He is beholden to its laws." She glanced aside at me. Her mouth quirked wryly. "If he is to suffer the headaches of citizenry, as he must, then it is fair and lawful that he should enjoy the protections offered to every citizen. He is therefore under my protection, and any quarrel you have with him, you also have with me." The Gruff stared at her for a moment, eyes narrowed in thought. "Are thou quite certain of thy position, Dame Murphy?" "Quite certain," she replied. "Even knowing that the duty solemnly charged unto me and my kin might require us to kill thee?" "Master Gruff," Murphy replied, laying a hand on her gun for the first time, "consider for a moment what a steel-jacketed round would feel like as it entered your flesh. The Gruff flicked its ears in surprise. A number of napkins were blown from the surface of a nearby table. Thou wouldst aim such weapons at the bane, at a lawful champion of the Seelie court? In your case, Master Gruff, Murphy said, I would hardly need to aim. Then she picked up the gun and aimed it at the Gruff's eyes. I started to panic. Then I saw where I thought Murphy was going with this one, and I had to work to keep myself from letting out a cheer. The Gruff's knuckles popped again. This, it growled, is neutral ground. Chicago, she replied, has never signed any accords. I will fulfill my duty. Attack me here, the Gruff said, and I will crush you. Crush me here, Murphy said, and you will have broken the accords while acting on behalf of your queen. Was that your intention in coming here? The Gruff ground its teeth, a sound like creaking millstones. My quarrel is not with you. If you attempt to take the life of a citizen of Chicago, who I am sworn to protect, you have made it my quarrel, Master Gruff. Does your queen wish to declare war upon the mortal authorities of Chicago? Would she wish you to decide such a thing? The Gruff stared at her, evidently pondering. Lady has a point, Tiny, I drawled. There's nothing to be gained here but trouble, and nothing to be lost but a little time. Walk away. You'll find me again soon enough. The Gruff stared at Murphy, and then at me. If I'd been less intrepid and fearless, I would have held my breath, hoping I'd avoided a fight. As it was, I held my breath mostly to cut down on the smell. Finally, the Gruff bowed his head toward Murphy, with more scraping of ceilings and wincing of bartenders. Courage, he rumbled, should be honored. Though thou art less a man than I thought, wizard, hiding behind a mortal, however valiant she may be. I let out a long breath as silently as I could and said, Gosh, somehow I'll try to live with myself. I will not o'erburden you long. This I promise. The Gruff nodded once to Murphy, then turned and scuttled out the way he'd squeezed in. He even shut the door behind him. Murphy let out her breath and put her gun away in her shoulder holster. It took her 2 or 3 tries. I sank into my chair on weak legs. You, I said to Murphy, are so hot right now. She gave me a weak smile. Oh, now you notice? She glanced at the door. Is he really gone? Yeah, I said. I figure he is. The summer court aren't exactly sweetness and light, but they do have a concept of honor. And if a fairy gives his word, he's good for it. Mac did something I'd rarely seen him do. He got 3 black bottles out from underneath the bar and brought them over to the table. He twisted the tops off and put one down in front of me and another one in front of Murphy, then kept the third for himself. I took up the bottle and sniffed it. It wasn't familiar with the brew, but it had a rich, earthy aroma that made my mouth water. Without a word, Mac held up his bottle in a salute to Murphy. He joined him. Murphy shook her head tiredly and returned the salute. We drank together, and my tongue decided that any other brew it ever would probably be a bitter disappointment from this day forward. Too many flavors to count blended together into something I couldn't describe if I'd had a week to talk about it. I'd never had anything like it. It was God's beer. Mac drained the bottle in a single pull, with his eyes closed. Then he lowered it. He looked at Murphy and said, Bravely done. Murphy's face was flushed with relief, and with a reaction to hear her beer that was at least as favorable as mine. I doubt Mac could have seen it, but I'd known Murph long enough to see that she started blushing, too. Mac went back to the bar, leaving Murphy and me to finish our bottled ambrosia. Okay, Murphy said in a weak voice. Where were we? You were about to tell me how you thought I was wrong and that the Chicago PD needed to intervene. Oh, Murph said, Right. She stared after the departed Gruff for a moment. You said that thing was from the nicer of the two groups causing us grief? Yep, I said. We've gone up against the supernatural 3 times, she said quietly. It's ended badly twice. We, meaning the cops, of course. I nodded. One of those occasions had killed her partner, Ron Carmichael. He hadn't been an angel or anything, but he had been a good man and a solid cop. All right, she said quietly. I'm willing to hold off for now. On one condition. Name it. I'm in from here on out. You obviously need someone to protect you from the big, bad billy goats. I snorted. Yeah, obviously. She held up the last of her beer. I held up mine. We clinked them, finished them, and went back out into the winter cold together. Thank you for listening to Chapter 17 of the Dresden Files. Small favor. Hopefully you guys were able to like, share, and subscribe. And you all have a wonderfully, beautiful, blessed holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever it is, season for you. Have a wonderful, blessed day.